Our real work is on
Mm-hmm.
developing ourselves. And if we're not doing that work, then we can say fuck it to everything else in our lives, because we actually cannot show up fully in anything in our lives if we're not doing our self work.
Hello, I'm Patten Squires, and I'm the host of the podcast. This podcast is for those who are dissatisfied with where they are at in their life and career currently. I used to be one. When I got out of college with my master's degree, I started working in banking. I eventually moved to a Fortune 500 company. I quickly found out being an employee was not for me. I was bored out of my mind and did not like it whatsoever. Something eventually lit a fire under me. I started studying for the CPA exam, listening to podcasts, and reading books every day. By doing that, I had passed all 4 parts of the CPA exam in 8 months and quit my job. I opened up my own tax firm, having never been paid to do someone's taxes before. That was in 2014. Since then, I've consistently grown my business, had a lot of success in other business ventures, including real estate, property management, among other things. And now, I'm looking for a new venture. I want to help inspire you and other entrepreneurs to achieve their potentials and dreams, as well as learn from the stories of these entrepreneurs as to see what has gone well and what hasn't gone well for them. Let's go create a bunch of healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Behind Their Success podcast. I am Patten Squires, the host. Today we have Erin Patten on. Her journey to life-changing effects of metaphysics includes Harvard classrooms, where she got her master's in business and public policy, executive positions, and also grieving the loss of her father and friend all at once. Metaphysics very simply invites us to go beyond the world that we see to activate the divine within us and bring our full self everywhere we go. She admits it might sound a little woo-woo, but the practice leads to effective, efficient decision-making and resilient workforces. She's founded Erin Patten and Associates, where she serves as a metaphysical master who guides magnetic CEOs in extinguishing organizational dis-ease by working through emotional and spiritual roots of conflict to find balance. Erin, good morning. Welcome on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Good day to you too, Patten. It is such an honor to be here with you and also with your audience members. It's just beautiful to be here.
So, Erin, got a little bit of your background there. Fill us in some more detail there. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, I'm originally from Houston, Texas, and I actually live here now. I lost my father and my friend simultaneously, and I have to be honest with myself and say that I lost my mother at
Wow.
that time too, because a few months after my dad passed away, my mom attempted
Mm,
suicide. She was dealing with severe
wow.
psychosis, and now she's in full on stages of dementia. And I am not sure if she knows who I
Mm.
am, to be honest. And so, however, I do care for her full time. It's lovely having her around and being with her, but that's actually what brought me back to Houston about 3 years ago. And it was at that time that I like to say that my real education began, because as you shared, I did go to Harvard. I got 2 masters from Harvard. I also went to University of Texas undergrad. I got 2 degrees from
Wow.
University of Texas. And I'm very academically accomplished. And when I was experiencing these emotional setbacks, if you will, I was not prepared to deal with them at all. And you would think that this highly capable business person and achiever should be able to manage these things, but it was fucking hard. And not only was it hard, it was just like I wanted to die in the process. It's like I don't even want to deal with this. It was just so overwhelming. And so that's when, like I said, my real education began, and I started to study essentially metaphysical psychology. And psychology traditionally is the study of the mind, and metaphysical psychology is a study of my own mind. So I was really I went to the University of Communication Sciences. I was working with a small group of students and our professor, Dr. Phil Valentine, and exploring our own lives, our own decisions, our own choices through the lens of these very esoteric, if you will, universal principles, spiritual principles. And I did that for about 2 years, in addition to doing yoga teacher training, which essentially was the integration of like the mind, the body, and
Mm-hmm.
the soul. And then I graduated from there to doing Tai Chi and ended up becoming a Tai Chi master, getting my designation in Korea. And all of that while still, launching what was then Erin Patten Associates and now currently the Meta Business World, as the global pandemic was
Okay.
happening, because I was growing sort of my own kind of spiritual education, metaphysical education, if you will, while a lot of folks around the world, and especially in business, were really struggling. And it just made sense that all of this work that I had been doing to really survive my own loneliness crisis, my own burnout, my own emotional kind of trauma was perfect for what people were experiencing during the pandemic and today, to be honest, in business. And so that's when I launched my business in November
Nice.
2020. I got my first client a few months after that, was the CEO of Frog Design, which is the design consultancy that designed Apple's first Macintosh. And then here I am today working across organizations with individuals and really amplifying their businesses and multiplying their value, their profitability, their mission, their vision with this integration, very specific integration of spiritual principles, metaphysical principles, and what I call future compatible organizational design. Because where we've been in the past with business is not compatible with the
Mhm.
future. And, as you know, and as I just spoke to, like how we've done business in the past, it's diseased. People are burnt out. People are not collaborating easily. There's so much dissension across ethnic groups, racial groups, gender groups. There's all these different classes, and it's a lot of
Mhm.
disconnection. And really, in order to move forward successfully as businesses, we have to not just be homogenous, we really have to be supportive and hold space for all these differences because they add tremendous value at the end of the day to companies. And so this is essentially a future forward thinking, and then working with organizations to actually implement structures and frameworks that can support and hold the space for these changes.
So when you go into these businesses, you're trying to help them, I guess, work better as a team and relate better to each other. What is a common issue you see, or some issue that you see repeated inside a lot of organizations?
That's a great question. I was speaking just now about the collaboration issue and the communication. I feel like for me, that's just a fundamental problem across the
Yeah,
board for
sure.
adults. And fundamentally, it starts with people not even knowing
Yeah.
who they are. So to be able to communicate their truth. And there's something about how we've been programmed to suppress how we truly
Mhm.
feel and please people and do what we're told. And that's very much the academic culture. I thrived in that culture and people telling me what to do and
Mhm.
doing it well. And essentially, that's how business continues to be run. So you have these grown adults that are essentially being treated like children and parented and not really able to have agency and communicate how they really feel about what's going on and what they see and what can be fixed and how we can do things better. There actually is not the proper communication channels within businesses to support these kinds of
Yeah.
tensions, if you will.
I would categorize myself definitely as a recovering people pleaser for sure. I'm the same thing. The guy that
Yeah,
checking boxes academically, sure, I have all kinds of degrees, certifications. Like I'm really good at that kind of stuff. But you're right. It's
yeah.
the same thing where it's like, are you really doing this for yourself? Are you doing it out of your own motivations or your own like self awareness? Are you doing that just to try not to upset other people?
Yeah. And not just not upset other people, like we're actually incentivized to
Yeah.
follow the rules. Like you get bonuses based off goals you hit. You get bonuses, you get raises, you get promotions based off how your managers and or the guys above them see you
Yeah.
and view you. So you're fundamentally incentivized and motivated to do what they like so that you can
Yeah.
move ahead.
The problem probably only gets worse and worse as the size of the organization grows, as more structure and things are put in place
Yeah.
to keep people processes and in boxes. That's a really tough thing to navigate, I'm sure, as an organization gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah. And that's why the work that I do, I'm really focused on working with leadership. I have to be honest. I know your audience members here are probably going on their own entrepreneurial journey or imagining how they could support companies in their own
Mhm.
ways. However, for me, when I was starting off, I thought that I can do big organizational work. Like it's going to be a top down, bottom up approach. And honestly, it's just too much for me to handle, for me to hold in this space, especially for companies where there's 10,000 people. That's a lot of
Mhm.
people. So for me, I had to start to really refine, okay, Erin, how am I going to have the greatest impact doing what I love? And it's starting to evolve more into, for me, a thought leadership position, an authority leadership position, where I'm working specifically with senior leaders who, and that could comprise in larger organizations, that can be likely less than 100 people, and or even less than that of the executive leadership team. Usually it's 20, 25, 30, and then including the board members. And when you're focused on these people, because essentially everyone reports to
Mm-hmm.
these people, then I feel like that's where I'm able to have the greatest transformation and the greatest
Right.
impact. Because essentially, as leaders, we hold the space, we direct the culture, we set the standards for how people will operate.
I've said this on other episodes and I guess out on social media, is like, as the leader of the business or the organization, like, you are the solution and the problem to everything, and everything is bottlenecked with you. Like, the organization won't grow because of some area that you lack in. So being able to work on yourself internally, and another thing we talk about all the time is 90% of the work to get what you want externally is actually done internally. All the work has to happen
Yes,
inside before anything's going to show up
yes.
on the outside.
That part. And literally that's all that I say this, like, first of all, every week on my
Right.
podcast. I say this, and so many times on my posts, is that the real work, like, we're business people, we go to work every day, but our real work is on
Mm-hmm.
developing ourselves. And if we're not doing that work, then we can say fuck it to everything else in our lives, because we actually cannot show up fully in anything in our lives if we're not doing our self work. We're going to always be anxious. We're going to always be frustrated. We're going to always get quick to anger. We're not going to be able, to your point, have solutions, make resolutions, compromise if we're not true and honest and open and working on ourselves,
Yeah,
period.
absolutely. So, you've done a lot of different things, got a lot of different degrees from impressive schools.
Yeah.
What would you say
Yeah.
is what is your best skill?
I'm really loyal. And I don't want to say to a fault, because it's just every experience is a
Mm-hmm.
lesson, right? And I feel like my best skill is just my loyalty. I'm gonna get like emotional talking about this, but I grew up, like, my dad was like my best friend, and that relationship and that feeling has morphed and changed, especially after his passing, because you know how life is as you grow up and you see your parents
Yeah.
differently. And yet, one thing that he used to always tell me growing up was that, like, you have, like, I mean, he would use this word, but obviously I'm not a man, but he's like, you have to be a man of your word. Like, I'm a man of
Mm-hmm.
my word. And that's something that I truly live and die by. Is just like, if I say something, I'm going to do my best to show up for it. And if I'm not, I'm not flaking. I'm going to send a message. I'm going to call. Or if someone needs me, I'm there for them. I'm just a very loyal person. And I also expect that from
Mm-hmm.
other people, and I don't always get it in
Sure.
the same measure. Yet I do understand everyone's at a different level of consciousness and everyone's on their own journey, so they can only show up as they
Yeah.
can show up. Yeah, I feel like for me, that's one of my best
Yeah, yeah.
skills.
Just I don't know if you'd sum that up as integrity, or if that's a decent word for that.
Yeah,
But yeah, and it's important to realize, and that's something that I try to. Well, I do remind myself every day when I have a visualization I read every day. But I have in there, it's like, people show up based on their level of enlightenment. Understand that, forgive that, right? You're talking about expecting the same level of loyalty or integrity back at you, but understand that everybody out there has all their own flaws and issues, and that's going to come in and affect you at some point.
100%, a
So
hundred
just
percent.
being able to hold that and understand that, and try to take a bigger view, almost like a third party view of that, and forgive, honestly. So you've come along on your journey. What would you say is the best decision you've ever made, Erin?
Probably left field for probably listeners, but I feel like the best decision I ever made was in 2012. I was applying to go to Harvard, going through that process, 2011, 2010, 2011, and then 2012 was the year I was meant to enroll. And I decided to leave New York, where I was living, move back to Houston. I worked for a few months here, and then I went to Brazil. Like, I spent 3 months in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro specifically, Rio de Janeiro. And that was the best decision I ever made in my life. I feel like I met to this day, there's some amazing people like who I'm still communicating with. Actually, the friend that I speak to that was murdered after my dad passed was my
Wow.
roommate in Brazil. And I just was so free. Like how I probably feel now after my spiritual dark night of the
Mm-hmm.
soul, spiritual work, such as et cetera, et cetera. I had that vibration that
Yeah.
entire summer. Like every day we woke up, it was a party. Like we didn't have shit to do. We went there to volunteer. Like I did volunteer, I did teach English, I taught hip hop dance, I did what I was supposed to do. However, the freedom and the
Mm-hmm.
playfulness that I experienced that
Yeah.
summer, I get chills because I don't know. I'm probably sure I'm going to have great experience for the rest of my life, but something about that year, I don't know if I can recreate that
Yeah.
energy. And like going to the beach all the time, going down to Lapa, drinking caipirinhas, samba dancing, meeting people, laughing, traveling. We went to Sao Paulo. I went to Bahia. I traveled all over the country. I've done a lot of travel. I've traveled to nearly 30 countries. Yet something about
Yeah.
Brazil just it spoke
Yeah.
to my
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
soul.
Just kind of lit you up. Yeah. And, I'm sure that was,
Yeah,
obviously I don't know all your background, but I'm sure it was probably a lot of culture shock picking you up out of one area and throwing you in the other. And you
literally.
certainly learn a lot of lessons, right?
That part. And coming especially out of New York, and before I was in New York, I was in school. So New York is such a serious, hardworking place. And then go to Rio where like everyone's just drinking beer all day on the
Yeah. Yeah.
streets. Like you said, culturally, it's just a different mode of being, a different modus operandi. It was just people are so much more chill, so much happier. People just thought I was so beautiful. I felt so admired and loved. And growing up in U.S., there was especially in New York, and I was working in fashion. I just had so many insecurities
Sure.
about my hair, about my body, about my butt, about everything. It was just like everything was critiqued, if you will, and that's part of my journey too. I always talk about my identity because I ended up starting a hair product company based on my naturally
Hmm.
curly hair because of so many experiences I had accepting what I looked
Hmm.
like. And this is, part of the work that we're speaking to of self-development is just accepting like this is who I am, this is what I look like, and this is what I come with, and being able to love every
Right.
aspect of
Yeah,
that.
that's great. That's good stuff. So I asked you what's your best decision you ever made. What's one of the biggest mistakes you've ever made?
I feel like hindsight is always 2020, so it's like, oh yeah, I can say it was a big mistake. But at the time, I felt like it was the right decision. Yet I really felt like I could have made better choices when it came to a partner for my child's
Hmm.
father. I felt like when I met my child's father, I was in a very low place. I had just moved back to Houston to care for my mom, and at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. And within a few months of meeting him, I decided to get pregnant because I really wanted my own child. And now everyone's always like, oh, are you going to have more kids? Are you going to have more kids? And I was just like, I have to make sure I find the right partner who will be able to be there in the ways that I need a loving partner to be. Because to this date, I'm still going through intense custody battles. I'm going through intense legal issues related to a property we own. And it couldn't have been a more soul crushing experience partnering
Yeah.
with this person. And I know a lot of people out there probably relate. I noticed that the more and more I talk to people, likely why I went through this experience, the more and more I see the challenges of marriages, of children,
Mhm.
of dealing with, like, for example, I went through a CPS case. My child was taken from me because I was lied upon and people conspired against me. Like it's out of a movie, literally, like what I went through with my child and what I'm still going through, and it's really strengthened me. I have to say, it's a worse decision that, of course, every decision turns to a blessing because I wouldn't be as rock solid as I am today. I wouldn't be such a warrior, the warrior that I am today. I wouldn't be the mama bear energy that I am today had it not been for me learning how to fiercely protect my child, my interests, and what I have going on in my life from someone who just wants to take and
Yeah.
destroy me.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah, it's the truth. Where it's the cliche doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. I mean it's true, right? So every lesson we look back at it and assign it, whether it's good or bad or what have you. And it's really nothing is necessarily good or bad. It's just what we think about it makes it good or bad. And so you can look at any experience and find the good in it and find what you think is the bad in it. But yeah. And,
100.
relationship things, it's so, I don't know, I guess I was just purely lucky. I had no idea what I was doing and happened to marry a great woman that we're both forward looking and willing to grow and develop together. That it wasn't anything I did, because at that point I had no idea what I was doing, but I guess I was just lucky and it worked out.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So looking back to your beginning of your journey, what is one piece of advice you would give yourself?
I would just say love myself more. And I know that also is very connected to our level of consciousness. So I couldn't expect myself to know any better. Yet I just really wish I gave myself more grace. And I do a little bit more of it now, a lot more of it now, and still have a long way to go with it. I shouldn't say long way to go, but I just needed to love myself more. And it's really hard and I'm going to take it here because it's just the truth, but as a woman, as a person of color, with all of the external noise, the external pressures, and also just what we hear from how we're supposed to be, like the minority conversations, the race conversations, the oppression of conversations, the judgment conversations, all of our lives. Like I was talking about this because I do some work with a group of African Americans now, and as part of the video, they were showing, Black people getting trampled by dogs and water hosed down. And I was like, enough of this narrative, and I just feel like so much of that programming affected me when it had nothing to do with me. At the end of the day, I'm me and those people are them, and that was their experience. And for me to just kind of start to take on all of this, the traumas of other people's lives, just because I look like someone or because I'm a woman, it creates, like you said, those undue pressures that really aren't mine. And so really having to work through that, heal through that has been, a journey in learning how to love me, like who's in this avatar. This is just how I showed up, however, nearly 40 years ago. Yet I've been me for eons, likely. And so and being able to acknowledge that truth and love who I am, despite how I may show up for other people, takes a lot of work. And the best piece of advice for me, I would just continue to just be like, I love you, Erin. I love you, Erin. You're doing great. Just keep going. You're amazing. You're beautiful. All the things that I never would tell myself because I was hating on myself so hard. I think that would be some advice for me.
That's a great piece of advice. One I would love to give my younger self as well. Same kind of thing. You go back to the people pleasing and all the different areas and the pressures you put on yourself that, like I even personally think that, I'm the kind of person that is much more even understanding of other people. And I hold myself to such a high standard and beat up myself so much that at some point it's not helpful, right?
Yeah, at all.
And then maybe a little strong language, but there's some truth to it, right? It's you're not giving yourself, like you said, that grace that you would maybe even give somebody else, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So Erin, what's the best way people can connect with you? They like what you say and what you got going on. What's the best way they can get a hold of you?
I would really love to hear from you on social media. I'm at I am Erin Patten across social media channels. And also you can go to my website, erinpatten.com, ERINPATEN. And you can learn more about me. You can learn more about my meta business methodology and how I serve organizations and can potentially serve you.
Very cool, Erin. Well, thank you for coming on the show today. Great conversation. I appreciate it. And we'll just both keep working on ourselves.
100%.
Audience, thank you. Appreciate you guys. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you found it valuable, please rate, review, and share it. That is the best way to help us build this and reach more people, as we're trying to accomplish our goal of help creating more healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. You can follow us on social media by searching for me, Patten Squires, or going to pattensquires.com. On the website and social media, we're always sharing tips of personal growth, and there we can actually interact. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.